Sorry, my TV just picked up my voice somehow. You have a smart TV?
I have a Roku.
Don't get a smart TV. It's always listening because I'll say something
Yeah.
and it triggers it to like, oh, did you want to watch Vanderpump Rules? And it's like, no, man. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Long Form Conversations, the podcast where we talk about long form improv. As always, I am your host, David, and today we have a very special guest. This is someone who is an improviser, an actor, a filmmaker, a writer, a couple other hyphens in there. Please welcome Tess Higgins.
Hello. Thanks for having me, David.
Thanks so much for stopping by. How's everything going?
It's great.
Loving life. We are recording this. I think this is about a month into your Lloyd run.
Yeah.
Is this you've had 3 shows so far?
Yes, except I missed the last one.
You missed the last one. Okay.
Yes.
So 2 under your belt, and you have one coming up.
Yeah, we have one tomorrow.
Yeah. How's it been so far? How's the experience been?
It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. I feel very lucky with the team so far. I feel like everyone is like very different in their skill set, which I think in terms of like what people are good at, and that makes it fun because it's not like we're all thinking the same way or we're always like making the same choices. And I also just like enjoy all of them as people. This week it was one of the girls on our team, Leanne, it was her birthday, and all 8 of us went to her birthday thing, and it was great. They're just a lot of fun, and so I hope we can like keep like building that momentum. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
especially with like this time of the year near the holidays, it's tough to get people together, or people are so booked or so busy, but to get all you.
We're even like doing a Secret Santa next week. It's kind of cute.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, so y'all have had a pretty close bond. You've been doing other like bonding, like retreats or bonding events.
We're doing trivia on Tuesday.
Oh wow.
So yeah,
this is great.
It's great. It's funny because someone in the group chat the other day was like, are we gonna see each other 3 days in a row this week? And it was like, because we have practice Sunday nights, shows on Monday, and then we're doing trivia on Tuesday. So yeah,
love bombing.
It is kind of cute. Yeah. Yeah, but I think anything you do to like deepen the connection outside of playing together makes you better and stronger, because then you just like each other more. So.
Also, you moved here in 2021.
Yeah.
And then now you just recently moved again. We don't have to say where, but
down the street.
Down the street. We're not neighbors anymore.
No, yes.
We found out a little too late that we lived right across the street from one another. How do you like your new neighborhood?
I love it. It's great. I mean, I can still walk to UCB, so that's good. It's still not too far, but it's quieter. This is a bit of a chaotic area over here, but I'm happy with it. So
do you ever walk to UCB, or have you ever?
I do every time. Yeah. Unless it's like late at night, I will like ask someone for a ride home or take a ride home, but I hate parking around there, and if I can walk, I might as well walk. So
sure. Yeah. I still have never walked there. I gotta give it a shot.
You gotta walk.
I know it is walkable. I don't know why. I guess growing up around Southern California, I'm so used to driving, even if it's like down the street.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, I'll do the 15-minute hassle of looking for parking and then having to walk anyways.
Yeah. Well, because coming from DC, very walkable place. Like, and so if there's an opportunity, like I walked to the clubhouse a couple weeks ago.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's very far.
It wasn't. So it was like split up, because I was like, okay, there's like this vegan pizza place on Hollywood Boulevard. And I was like, let me get there, get a slice of pizza. And then, Daniel from my Super Boom, my like Ouija's team lives like a couple blocks on the other side of the clubhouse. And he was like, everyone come over before the show. So I walked over there, and that was 30 minutes. And then it was a 5-minute walk from his place too.
Got it. So yeah, if you take little breaks.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the trick to being in a walkable city, is taking breaks? Maybe.
Perhaps.
Maybe. Yeah. I remember what I want to talk to you about now.
Yes.
So last Thursday was the finale of the Golden Bachelor.
Oh my God.
Yes. And we haven't talked about it yet, but we usually kind of recap, because I just started watching, but you're a longtime Bachelor.
Oh yeah. A scholar,
Bachelor Nation patriot.
Yeah.
Wow, what nuts. So this is going to come out a couple weeks, so I think it's okay if we spoil it.
Oh, for sure.
what did you think about the outcome?
So I always read the spoilers whenever they come out, but there wasn't a spoiler about who won the season literally up until like the week before.
Uh-huh.
I think it came out kind of like right around Thanksgiving, and I saw that he picked Teresa instead of Leslie, and I was pretty sure it was going to be Leslie, and I was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Does that ruin the viewing experience for you?
No, because at that point you kind of just know what happens, but you don't know why it happens or how it happens.
Mhm.
And so I
I still don't
enjoy.
know why it happened or how
So
it happened.
I mean, I have a good prediction because he
Okay.
kept referring to like, oh, everything changed for me when I was in the fantasy suite. And I was like, that must have been when Teresa was like, here's my bank account.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that he
Yeah.
realized like because literally the entire I can't believe she didn't mention what her job was at all in the entire time of the show, literally until
Yeah.
that second to last week. And she was like, oh yeah, like I'm a day trader. And he was probably like dollar signs or whatever.
And is she even a successful day trader?
Yeah, it sounds like she was. Yeah.
Okay. So for
Um,
those of you people that don't know, we gotta give some context. So there's a show called The Bachelor. I'm sure you heard of that, but they did a season called The Golden Bachelor recently. It's the first time I've ever watched it. I think that was the hook for me,
mhm.
is that they're all septuagenarians or
Yes.
octogenarians or whatever. But this season was like the Golden Bachelor's name is Gary.
Yeah.
Super like shucksy doodle,
Jovial kind of guy. Yeah.
very
Like
very cool, very like I don't know, yeah. But everyone's like, this is too good to be true.
yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I fell for it. I
Oh,
fell for
me
the ads.
too.
I thought
Yeah.
he was a really good guy. But then the week before or the day before
It was the day before, yeah.
the finale, there was this like expose that came out.
Yeah, and the
And
Hollywood Reporter.
he's pretty much kind of like a Dear John figure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the
And
thing
when I
of
say Dear John, I mean like that podcast from a couple of years ago. Like he's like a guy that like just goes from like rich widower to rich widower, like leeching off of them.
like Dirty John.
Sorry, did I say
Yeah.
Dear John?
Yeah, yeah,
Dirty
yeah.
John. Yeah, he's like a Dirty John figure, is what I
Yeah,
meant
I
to
mean,
say.
I think the big thing in the article was just kind of like the entire show he's acted like he hasn't dated anyone since his wife passed away,
Yeah.
and that was clearly not the case. He had a full live-in girlfriend and you know wanted
And
her
he's
to.
supposed to be like this like retired restaurateur,
Yes.
but it turns out he's like
Well, he was a hot tub
struggling.
repairman.
He's a handyman.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of like to evoke another reality TV show. He's like a Joe Millionaire.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think he was low key a little broke.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
then
to be and like, you know, I don't want to, you know, obviously people's financial situations
yeah,
are
yeah.
their own, but like to be retired and then to like have a girlfriend to make her pay half the rent. And I'm just like,
See,
what's going
well,
on? Do you not own the home? Do you pay rents?
no,
What do you
yeah,
know?
and especially too, the weird thing
Like
about it was is
charging
that
rent.
like he asked, and this was his like the secret alleged girlfriend from before the show that he started dating a month after his wife died. It's also a
And
little.
insisting her to move in,
Yeah,
pushing
asked
her
her
to
to move
move in
in, asked her to quit her job.
because she lived. It was like a very far away
Yeah, and
place.
so I would assume that if you're like, "Hey, babe, quit your job and come move in with me," I'm like,
You're gonna take
"Great,
care of me.
stay at home girlfriend, let's go." Like,
Yeah.
and then you get there and he's like, "Okay, get a job."
I'm a broken man. I'm still mourning. I don't have
Yeah.
like the capability to take care of myself. I need you to take care of me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it just didn't sound that great.
Yeah, but anyways, down to the wire, there was these two contestants
Yep.
left, and they could not be any more different, I'd say.
So different.
Pretty
Yeah.
night and day situations, like Teresa and Leslie. And Leslie's a bit more like fun, spontaneous,
Yeah,
bit of a
yeah.
firecracker. Teresa, very.
It also made me think too, because like Leslie was the one who'd been like divorced twice. And it kind of, there was like a little, I don't know if it was a dig, but Gary definitely said something where he was like, oh, well, Teresa's ability to like maintain a marriage for that long was a green flag, which is an implied red flag
Yeah,
towards Leslie. And it's,
that's
I don't think we should be implying or taking the position of like people who have been divorced don't still deserve love, unless they're
yeah,
terrible people,
or
but
incapable. Yeah,
yeah. And so it almost made me think, I was like, it's another reason why, you know, the show, like they're always pushing the contestants to like reveal their traumas like very early on. And that's considered opening up and being vulnerable. And like, that's how you show the Bachelor that you're ready for love, because look at how ready I am to talk about like my deepest problems with you. That means we must really connect or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the thing you'd reveal early on in any other dating situation. Like if I was someone who had been divorced twice, I wouldn't talk about that or give any details about how neglected or terrible I felt about that until a
Yeah.
while on. And I think it definitely like changed his opinion of her.
We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like trauma dumping, and oh, sorry, that's the wrong term. What's the term we said?
Trauma bonding.
Yeah, trauma
Yeah.
bonding. And it's like, you have to feel safe to be vulnerable around someone like that, because you
Yeah.
don't know, because like, yeah, the worst thing that can happen is you could tell someone your past and what you're dealing with, and then they can reject you for it or
Yep.
leave you for it, like they did in this situation.
Yeah.
Versus like, I think in a more normal, healthy situation, you get to know someone, you realize like this person is gonna care for me, and if I tell them my, you know,
Yeah.
my soul, and they're not going to reject me for it, so I feel safe doing so. And then I was going to ask you about the Bachelor. So you're saying that they do that all the time.
Mhm.
Is it also common for the Bachelor to say, I love you or I'm falling for you? Or is that normally like,
Yeah. So there's
that sucks?
it's a little messy. So really, the first time that happened, I think, was Ben Higgins' season. I think he was the Bachelor in like 2015 or 2016, and he was the first Bachelor to ever tell both of his final two contestants that he was in love with them. And so that's
Previously, they would just be like,
they would just save
thank
the I
you.
love you for whoever gets picked at the end. And during the
Yeah.
proposal, they would be like, and I love you.
But when the contestants say something like,
yeah, they'll just say
I'm
thank you.
falling for you, and they're like, thank you so
Or
much.
they'll be like, that makes me really happy, or like, I'm so happy.
Okay.
I'm so glad you said that. Like, I feel very strongly for, like, it would always be vague
Because they were
because
careful to not
yeah.
lead them on.
And so this guy Ben Higgins told both Lauren and JoJo. And so because of the history of the show, if you're, since they know you generally only tell that to one person, they were probably like, it's me. And of course it wasn't one of them. And
Yeah,
that was a really bad like look, and it made him look like a dick
a
for
playboy, yeah.
And so now I think people are like a little more careful about it, but it still happens. And even the most recent Bachelorette, Charity, she said I love you to both of her final people, and it was like, why are they still doing that? Like, I know it's probably hard to not say it to the person that you really want to pick, but then that also gives away the ending. So it's either you say it to no one or you say it to everybody.
Right.
So
I can see a producer just being like, hey, like you already said it, so it's too obvious. So you got to say it to the other person too. Or yeah, like yeah, that is nasty business. Cause like, even if you don't watch the TV show, if you don't watch the reality show, and like you forget that it's a game, because this is their lives, not a game.
Yeah.
To hear someone that you are like dating and how it feels with tell you that they love you, you're of course going to glob on.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple of like episodes ago, I used to like watch Leslie and be like, slow down, be careful, you know, but then she'd open up. And then by the finale, when she was saying all those things, I was just like, oh, the reason why I've always been so like slapping her hand is because like, oh, she's me, you know, I'm admonishing the parts of her that I see in myself. Right.
Yeah.
Like when she had that breakdown, like I was cheering her on. I was like, yeah, you should say that. What did she say? She said,
like, don't tell me how,
don't tell me how to feel.
Or I can feel however the fuck I want. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, and he's like, okay. I'm like, yeah, that is so true. Because
yeah. Well, he said like, don't be sad, be happy. And she was like, that was a crazy thing to say. Like, be happy.
Yeah. Be happy that she just broke my heart.
Yeah.
And does that usually happen before the finale? That like
the breakup? So
that felt kind of,
no, I think because the only reason that he would, after saying I love you to Leslie, like he literally said to her in the last episode, like, you're the one or whatever. And then
they had the overnight.
And then they're having their last chance date, which is what they call like that, like day before proposal. And she's saying, I love you. And he's not saying it back. So she knows.
That's when he said that I feel very strongly about it. He said something.
Or he said like, that's so special. And it's like, okay, that's so special. Something's wrong.
What were you saying last night?
Yeah. And so my best guess is that the producers were like, you have to take both of them to the final rose ceremony, which means that like, and they'll do it like suspenseful, like, oh, whose foot is stepping out of the car first? Because that means they're the one who's getting broken up with. And then she'll go up there and thinks that she's getting proposed to. And then he'll be like, Leslie, stop. or, and then have to walk her to the car.
Have they
Like,
done that?
yeah, that happens almost every season.
Oh my gosh, that's
But, and
horrible.
I'm sure that's what the producers wanted to happen. But then Gary like had a breakdown after he left her room
Yeah, I
because
don't want
he
to
was
break
like,
his heart. Yeah.
because he knew, like, he was like, she knows something's up, and like she knows I'm not picking her, like,
Yeah.
let me just do this now instead of having her get ready tomorrow. Like, I will at
Put on
least
that
like give him
$60,000 dress.
credit for that,
Yeah.
because that's super rough, as he gave her a benevolent execution at that point. So
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, I just feel so bad for her because to get so close. This is such a weird game. It's a game
yeah.
because the closer you get to the finish line, the harsher the fall will be.
Yeah.
Because you see all the other golden bachelorettes or all the other contestants rather in the audience.
Yeah.
They're kind of laughing at a good time because that was months ago and they never had a chance to like
Yeah.
really
Yeah. They didn't
fall
really
too
fall.
deep.
Yeah.
But then you see Leslie and you see the whole audience. That's also, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that in front of everybody. To
Yeah.
have like all these like close-ups and everybody like react.
Yeah.
That seems perverse. I don't know. I'm reading the Hunger Games right now. It
I was
feels like
gonna say it's very Hunger Games.
it's giving
Yeah.
like Hunger Games because like I'm reading the book right now and like like I'm reading the new one, the Ballad of it, and it's just like they zoom in on the mentors whenever there's like a fight or whatever. I'm like, why? And it's just this is just like that. We're zooming in on all the we're zooming in on this year's or the next Bachelor.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
Joey.
yeah, and it's just like, what? This is so weird that we're zooming in on him when it has something to do with
Yeah.
this. Anyways,
Yeah.
wild stuff. I don't know if I could do another season of this.
I hope they do a Golden Bachelorette though. I think that would be fun.
I think that'd be interesting, but I don't know if my heart could take it because I have been emotionally like on this ride, hoping that it would be happy, but was not prepared for this like 11th hour.
Yeah,
like,
big fall from grace.
Tragedy.
Yeah.
And you're saying that they're usually like that.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty consistent. There's always something that comes out about somebody the week of the finale. Like that's when the skeleton comes out of the closet. So
even at age whatever 72. Can't find any good guys.
That's sad.
That's depressing. All right, let's talk about improv. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, talking about The Bachelor was great. So
yeah, thanks so much for being my guide through that.
Oh yes, of course. I mean, I can't wait for Joey's season. I think he's the first Bachelor in a while I'm excited about. So I think seems like a good guy. Let's hope.
Fingers crossed. We'll wait. We'll check out Hollywood Reporter.
Yeah.
refresh the day of. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into our first segment now, which is gonna be Improvster Syndrome. So this is your opportunity to tell us about your improv journey up to here. We want to hear any rise, falls, trials, tribulations.
Yeah. So I have always been like a theater kid. I did theater in high school and college. I did it like professionally in DC for a while, like musical theater and stuff. And in college, one of my best friends in college and then my freshman year boyfriend were both on like the short form like improv team, and I was always invited to their parties.
Which college was this?
William and Mary.
And then was this were you like it was a theater program?
Yeah, it was a liberal arts school, so it wasn't like a BFA or anything, but I was always hanging out with them and I was always going to their shows, but I never did anything. I was just around it a lot. And then like the year after I graduated college, like my parents gifted me like a class at Washington Improv Theater for Christmas, and so I was like, all right, let's give this a try. And
is that like a normal type of gift that they would give you? What made them decide to give you this?
I think it was like we were having a conversation where I was like, oh, that might be fun or something, and then they were like, here's a gift card or whatever. And so
but they're used to you like taking like acting classes, theater classes.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I mean, and
classes.
I think it was also too like at least at that time in my life, it was a way to perform without it being as like high stakes,
got it. Yeah.
Because every other thing I was doing for performance was like a job or
did they know what improv was, or did you I know that you mentioned that you did you saw it in college, but did they know what it was?
And I mean I it was just like short. I didn't really know a lot about like long form or anything, and I'm trying to think of like probably the first time I saw long form was was there, or maybe it was at because at college I remember we had like a Second City tour come through and like UCB tour or something like that. Um, but I, worked my way through all those classes and it was really fun. And
What was that first class like? Do you remember?
um, it was great. It was on Friday nights too, which was like hilarious. Like it was a 7 p.m. Friday night class. And so it was a real mix of people too. Cause the thing that was kind of cool about improv in DC is that like everyone was just doing it for fun. Like no one was like really trying to like do comedy or
Mhm.
anything. Like I had one friend who like do you know Eric Acuna?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Eric was on my Herald team and he was like, you know, the one who was like making a one-man show and taking it to Edinburgh Fringe and like super like successful funny guy who was like kind of doing things outside of like just improv for fun, but he was also like a human rights lawyer. So,
Yeah.
so everyone had like, a very like DC kind of job. Like teammates worked for like the EPA or like on the Hill, or someone worked at Politico, or it was really weird because I was like the only person who was actually like performing elsewhere, or like,
Yeah.
doing it in a more like serious way. And I remember like there was one time where I was in like a production of Godspell and I knew I was going to have to miss like 2 months of like Herald practice and shows. And I was like, I'm scared I'm going to get kicked off, like, because there's like attendance requirements and stuff. And
Mhm.
my mom was like, well, this probably happens all the time, right? And I was like, no, I'm the only person here who does this. So,
Do you
um,
think that there was like a I don't know, like kind of like maybe like a social, like was it weird that like they would have, like these like high pressure jobs and I don't know. I guess I'm trying to say is like, yeah, did that life experience cause any differences between y'all?
I mean, I think,
Like, were they able to even go out on Friday nights or
oh
like,
yeah, well that was kind of what was fun about the class is it'd go till like 9:30 and then
uh-huh.
we'd like all go out after, and it was fun. And I stayed with like a lot of those same people throughout like my whole like, that first year of class or whatever. Um but I also quite enjoyed how different everyone was because at that point like almost all of my friends were like friends from theater or friends from college.
Mhm.
And so it really helped me like branch out and meet a bunch of people who, had
Yeah.
something in common with me, but also their lives were a little more like normal.
Yeah, more varied. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was always a lot of fun. But and then I think it was like maybe a year into doing, yeah, I think it was like a year or so into doing classes that I ended up like dating a guy who was on a Herald team. And so this was before I was even like in, performing myself or anything. And I had gone to see like a show for class. And I remember thinking like, oh, that guy's cute or whatever. And then I saw him on Bumble like a couple weeks later. And he went to college with one of my good friends, the one who I made the movie with actually. And I was like, hey, do you know this guy, Brian? Like, cause my Bumble match had expired. And then she was yeah, I know him. And I was like, can you give me his number? Cause we matched and I didn't message him. And we dated for a while. And so I kind of got to know a little bit of like the scene, like through him. Um, and then probably like a year later, I had auditioned for Harold, didn't get on the first time, but I did the second time. And then I did it for like 2 years. I was on two Harold teams because they disbanded mine halfway through.
So before we jump into that, what were the classes like?
Yeah.
Were they pretty like, I don't know, like did you get through them pretty easy, especially since you had like a bit of like an acting background?
Yeah. I mean, for me, they were always fun. And, I felt kind of like I picked up a lot of stuff, but then it was hard because, you did sometimes you would have people in class who were like doing it to get better at public. And maybe you have like you know, 50-year-old guy who's working at like, I don't know, like a home improvement company who's a little like more reserved and like kind of doesn't get what's going on. And so like it could be like a little tricky in that way because again, the overall goal of the class is to not get good at comedy there, right? It's like,
Yeah, good at like doing improv and
and
listening and
yeah, yeah.
building.
And so, the classes also kind of had a different structure. Like I think it was like intro to improv and then, like character or like conflict and scenes or that kind of stuff. And then like level 5 was just like where you learned the Herald and then that was that. So
Yeah, I always think it's interesting hearing about people doing improv in other communities. So like I started off in Orange County, and
yeah.
like it's all just fun. Like
Yeah.
the whole idea of like having pressure or like getting competitive or getting in your head doesn't really exist. Otherwise, people wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
because there's no, I don't know how it was in Washington, but like in Orange County, like there's no like audition process. There's no like failing a class or whatever. So you just kind of keep doing it because you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it and you have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like and I'm glad I like hearing when people's first couple of years doing improv is it was just fun and it was just great
Yeah.
versus like it was like really stressful and I just really had to like pound the pavement. I had to do a bunch of different practice groups. So it sounds like this was like mostly social and mostly like
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And it was interesting too because when I was living there, my brother actually lived out here in LA and I would visit him a bunch. And, I started to kind of hear about UCB through other people on my Herald team.
mhm.
And I was like, why don't I just go visit my brother for a week and I'll do like the 101 intensive or whatever. And
How long into this was
I
this
did
trip?
that like January 2019. So I was probably on a Herald team for like a year and a half at that point.
So you've already been doing like a bunch of improv.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But that was like a huge experience for me and kind of the thing that like changed it all because I was like, oh, this is like big boy season over here, and even that was like the 101 class or
Yeah.
whatever too. And so I was like, uh, and they
You
were teaching game kind of right from the start too. And I had kind of, it wasn't like a phrase that was used a lot at WIT. Like we were doing it, but it was always like called something else that I don't even remember right now. But
do you remember who your teacher was
uh it
for the intensive at
it
UCB?
was Ari Vukidis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um and it was a great time and I feel like I learned a lot and that was kind of the thing that I was like I think I'm doing like more of this. I was like maybe I should move to LA or whatever
Yeah.
and here I am. But that was kind of a thing where I realized like oh there are people who like have a formula for this and like really like take it seriously
And
in a
you're
way
kind of
that's
out here
fun.
doing it with maybe people with similar backgrounds to you. It wasn't
Oh
gonna be,
yeah.
home improvement company
Right.
guys.
Yeah. That first class, it was a bunch of people who were like, oh, my agent wants me to take this class for commercials, or,
Mhm.
others similar kind of like people kind of getting their feet into performing or whatever. And so that was a different vibe to it as well, for sure. So
Going back to Wit, do you remember what your like what the audition process was like there? Was it more casual? Was it more
no, I mean, it felt kind of like auditioning for Lloyd here and stuff. I think, yeah, you were in like a group of probably like 8 or so, and
mhm.
then you would do, you basically did like the first half of a Herald, like 3 first beats, 3 second beats, or whatever.
How'd you feel going into it though?
I
You-
fine because I was like I could do this, like
yeah.
at this level I could do this or whatever. And
Forgot to mention too. I forgot to ask rather. Before you auditioned and after the classes, did they have like an indie? Did you have like an indie team, or was there?
no, that wasn't really like, I mean, you could
Yeah.
certainly, and like you could submit, like they would do, because the thing too is like they didn't really have their own space, is like they operated out of this theater called Source, which shared with another like actual like theater company that did plays and musicals, and then like an opera company almost. So they were always kind of rotating through who kind of got the stage at that point, and like the top level of the theater was all the offices. So it was their home base, but it wasn't like UCB where there's shows every night of the week.
Yeah.
Herald Night was always consistent, and that was always Tuesday nights. But depending on if there was like, it wasn't Wits month to have the theater, we were doing it up in the rehearsal room or whatever,
Yeah.
which was like a little silly. And then, so that meant that it was probably like every other month, Wit would get a run of shows. And so it was like the shows had a theme. It was like the holiday shows or whatever that ran through January or whatever. And you could submit your indie team to do it if you had one. And usually it would be like every show would have 2 house teams and then an opener that was like the indie team or something.
So for you, step into that first audition. So I know you probably don't get stage fright because you do actual theater, but was there like a apprehension to be like, but this is improv. I didn't rehearse. I didn't have a script. I kind of have to.
I mean, I definitely think I was like I was still nervous for it because also like you don't have control over who's in there with you. And like if I was in class playing with the same people for like a year or whatever, and now I'm with somebody that's kind of what always would like freak me out. Like there was one time I remember I auditioned for, it wasn't a Herald team, it was like a different, like they called them special projects, and it was like you were basically a house team for like 5 months or
Mhm.
whatever or something, and they all had like a theme, and this one was called like yearbook, and it was all supposed to be inspired by like stories from high school or things like that. And I remember auditioning for that team, and someone in my group was like a guy that I literally, before I had even gotten the gift card to the class from my parents, someone I went on 2 dates with. And I remember I'd like left my phone charger at his house, and then I never saw him again. And then 2 months after him ghosting me, he texted me and was like, "Hey, I have your phone charger. Do you want it back?" And I was like, "What are we doing? Are you gonna Pony Express this to me or something?" Like I just thought it was so weird. And then he's in my audition group and literally will not make eye contact with me. And I blew it, just because,
Got in your head.
yeah. And I was
Wow.
like, and then he ended up getting on the team too,
How dare
which
he?
was funny. But I'll never forget that. So, you never know what'll happen in that moment.
That's
But
one of the, I think the tough things, especially like you mentioned, yeah, coming from like a
yeah.
theater background, it's all about control. It's all about
Yeah,
like,
like you can practice that monologue as many times as
yeah,
you
we
want.
know exactly who you're stepping out with, what you're gonna say,
Mm-hmm.
where you're gonna take a step, and then come back to improv. It's like the relinquish of control, where it's just
Yeah.
like you can't control anything. You may step onto a stage of someone that you don't know or don't like, and it's just like, but then you gotta,
You
put
got
on a
to
good
do
show.
it. Yeah. And like, I do remember the second time I tried out for Harold, though, I was like, oh, I know I'm getting in. I was like, it was like my second beat, and I knew it like crushed. And I felt the same way with Lloyd too. Like after that audition, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to get in.
What
So
was the difference between, I guess, obviously you didn't step out with some dude that stole your charger, but like, what was it? What was that feeling like? Had you taken more like practice groups, or had you gotten more reps? What was the different feeling?
I'm trying to think. I feel like not that long had passed, because I think it was like the first time I tried out was in like May, and then it was like September by the time I tried out again, because they did shorter cycles, so it was like 3 or 4 months they would have new people audition. And so it wasn't that long, but I think it was just kind of like the energy. I felt like I was like everything's kind of clicking, like, and the person I was in like my second beat with, we were speaking the
Yeah.
same language. Um and then it was funny too, because I remember like uh one of the people who ended up being my coach on that team was in like the auditors or the people watching.
Mhm.
And he said later on, he was like, "Oh yeah, like we saw you like do that voice in the woman in the bathtub, and we were picking her immediately." And I was like, "Okay, so that's what I was thinking too. It was that I did
Mhm.
that stupid fucking voice of like this lady in a bathtub." And
Right.
anyway,
Like you were just making choices and they were
yeah,
hitting, connecting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's always great. Yeah. Whenever you make a decision that lands, like
yeah.
it's like it connects with you, it connects with
Yeah,
the
and
audience.
that was how I felt like in Lloyd too, because I was like, I was in this first beat, and like I had initiated it, and it was like going well, and I was like, okay, now I have to like prove that I can like keep the game going or whatever. And it was just like I did kind of like this one line that was kind of the, you know, heightening of whatever we were doing, and then it got a huge laugh, and I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. So
Yeah.
yeah.
How long did you do the Wit Herald for?
It was 2 years. And then that was kind of like the max they wanted you to do it.
Mhm.
But I did the like, you can't fire me, I quit, so that I didn't have to officially be asked to like quit the program. Um, because sometimes what they would do is they would take the like, you know, really good Herald teams, and they would make them a house team. And
Mhm.
so I was with a year and a half. I was with my one team, the one that Eric was on, that James Shellen was on too, and Kara as
Yeah.
well from your team. And we were like on fire. We were like really good and solid, but our coaches just kept quitting on us. Like, and we had like 4 coaches throughout that entire year and a half. And uh
What was it called? Something PhD?
Captain PhD,
Captain
yeah.
PhD. Why did
And
you have so many coaches leave
I
you?
don't know, it was just it was some like,
What were you doing to these four
I don't know. We
coaches?
were definitely a dramatic team, but I don't think it had anything to do with like
But it was
them.
a solid one, is what you're saying.
There was like a pattern, and one of them moved away, so that was a little different. But
But your shows are good. Your shows are
yeah,
solid.
but the thing was, is right before it was time for like a new cycle where they
Mhm.
would audition people, and we were pretty sure like, well, no one's quitting our team, so unless someone is being asked to leave the program because they're not holding up, then we're going to stay the same. And I was like, I don't think anyone's getting cut. Like, we're pretty good. And then our coach kind of quit out of nowhere, like the week before auditions, and sent like this crazy email to our, well, I don't know if it was crazy, but I just remember it was crazy because it came out of nowhere and like we didn't know. And we were kind of like, don't we have like 3 more months left of this? Like, and we all we were doing a show at Dojo, which was like this indie theater, and we all went out after, and then we all got the email at the same time, and we were like, are we dead? Like, like if she just quit on us, like who are we, you know,
you're gonna give us a replacement, or you?
And that's what happened, is we got totally disbanded, and like all of us got put on brand new teams.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so then I finished out Harold with a different team that had already existed but was being reshuffled. So it was like 4 or 5 like existing people, and then like 3 new people were
Let's
on
talk
it.
about this. I think this is a very interesting and unique experience that, you know, is worth diving into, because you had been working with the team for 1.5, 2 years.
Yeah.
You're all really close and you guys are having fun in these shows.
Yeah.
How did it feel to have that out of your control? Because I would assume that if y'all liked each other, you would want to stay together.
It sucked. And like, I think like the leadership probably at the theater knew that too. Cause I mean, I think they knew we wanted to be like a house team, or we're like hoping that we'd get there. And then it kind of felt like, okay, I guess we're not going to be given a chance to do that. And there was, I guess, a philosophy at the theater of like, oh, you should always be like, we like to switch it up so you can like learn from different people. And I'm like, I'd rather just get good with like the same people than like have to like make this be a learning experience, which again, I understand if they're an educational theater and that's kind of their thing, then that's why they were doing that. But it did feel annoying to have to like, you know, dump them and like suddenly get acquainted to a new team. And then my 2 years was up and it was time to leave anyway. But I mean,
what was like jumping into a new team? Because I think
it was also... I got really lucky. I loved the team that I got put on, that had a lot of good, really strong people, and our coach was the guy who taught my like level 2 class, and so he was a lot of fun, and I knew him already, and I knew some of the other people from my old team when they got reshuffled like weren't as happy with like the groups that they got or whatever. And so that went well, and like I don't know if you know Busy from so she was on that team with me. And
I love Busy.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. It was called Oh That Baby. And we did our 4-month run or whatever, or maybe it was like 6 months actually. At that point they'd switched it to 6 months, so we'd done half a year together, and then we kind of knew, we were like, it's so many of us were about to hit the 2-year mark, and so it's like we're either getting cut or we're getting promoted. And then we tried to like make a push to get promoted, and it didn't happen. And then so all of the like people who knew they were at their 2-year mark, was like me and like 2 other people, and we were like, we're just gonna say that we quit, and then we can't be asked to leave.
Was this like around 2019?
Yeah.
So what happened? What's that post life like in at WIT? Like, what do you do if you...
I mean, I was on another team because I auditioned for one of those special projects too, and it was one that Eric did. It was called Heavy Rotation, and it was a improvised rock musical. So it was like, it was musical improv, but also everyone was playing their own instruments too. And it was...
Do you do musical improv?
That was and so that was that was a lot of fun, and we would have shows every now and then. It was one of those special projects that kind of got extended over and over because it was like, doing well. And so I was still doing that, and like the 2 Herald teams, we did kind of like stick together and do like little indie shows here and there, like Captain PhD. We went to like Steel Stacks Festival, which was like at this like casino in Pennsylvania. So that was fun. So I was still doing stuff too, but then by that point I had also kind of gotten back into a lot more theater stuff, and I'd booked like one of the bigger contracts I'd had in a while, and so I was doing that, and other stuff was taking up my time. And then COVID happened like 3 months later, so it didn't have a lot of time to experience not doing it. So,
and so what were your pandemic days like in terms of improv? Were you watching it? Were you doing it?
No, I didn't do anything. I was like, I mean, that team Captain PhD, we did like a couple online shows. I didn't do any class. I didn't do anything. I was just like, it kind of depressed me a little bit because I was like, this isn't a real thing. And it felt like trying to like
we're talking about Tess Higgins, star of stage and screen. We're talking she needs to be out and physical.
No, but I kept myself busy. I made a lot of like I did a thing where I asked people to send me a scene from a movie or a TV show. If they Venmoed me $5, I would recreate the entire scene in my apartment, playing all the roles, using only what I had at home to do it.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing 100 of them. I made a couple $1,000s off it because then people would send me more money and to like get theirs to the top.
That
of
was
the
like
line.
Cameo, huh? Or it's like it's like piano bar covers.
Yeah, that's
meets acting.
exactly.
Meets
Yeah,
cameo.
I called them the Corona tapes.
Yeah, but that's so fun. Do you remember like any that you did?
Yeah, I mean, the first one I did was that like scene from Devil Wears Prada where they're like, "Oh, this is cerulean," like so that was fun. And after a while, I was like, going crazy. I lived by myself, and I was like, this is the only thing that's like taking up a lot of my time creatively. And I was like, send me stuff that you think would be very hard for me to like recreate. And someone was like, Twister, and I was like, perfect. And so like I made like a friggin' tornado with water in my blender just zoomed in. It was like very like
that's so fun.
Like stupid and silly.
How much did you charge for that?
It was a flat fee of $5, but you got bumped to the top if you gave me more. And then some people would just send me tips. Like, you know, I just put my Venmo on.
You still doing this?
No, it was, I mean, it was a lot of energy. And
I would love to give you $10 to do Twilight.
You know, it's crazy that no one asked that.
Yeah.
But maybe I should bring it back. Maybe I'll do it just for you.
Yeah, we're rolling on different crowds. Because the problem
is I feel like it would have done even better if it was on like
TikTok,
but I wasn't on TikTok at the time, so
Where'd
it was all Instagram.
Okay.
They're all still there, and it was funny too. I got like someone from the Washington Post did a little feature about it. And
did anybody ask you to do musicals?
What?
Did anybody ever ask you to do musicals?
Someone had me do Pitch Perfect.
Okay.
The like audition scene, which that was crazy too, because I wasn't like good at editing either, and I didn't even have a laptop.
Oh,
at the time.
Since You've Been Gone montage.
Yeah.
Whoa, that is a hard one.
And I was just editing everything on my iPad, and so it's like me trying to acapella with myself. It's like so bad, but it's funny. I had someone ask me to do like The Godfather, where he like falls into the fountain or the pool or whatever, and so that was just me falling on my blue yoga mat. Like it was all very stupid, but
yeah, bring it back. And like let's really stretch your abilities. Let's get you to do some like
I saved one of the harder ones for the very last. I did the fire alarm scene from The Office, the cold open. It goes for like 4 minutes.
Oh wow.
Where like, the cat flies through the ceiling or whatever. That took like a very long time to finish because it was so many little things, but I tried to do it like, shot for shot as best as I could. So yeah.
It sounds amazing. You should put this all on TikTok. That'd be great.
I know, they're just in portrait, or they're not in,
Oh, they're all in
length, or widescreen or whatever.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay, put them on YouTube then.
Yeah. Some of them are there. I still have a couple on my website. Because I also did like that monologue from Barry. Like, did you ever watch Barry?
Yeah.
Where like the girl is talking about how like, and you know what? Like I was supposed to audition for a movie about girls with guns, and now here you are with this stupid script, and you're gonna get a role or whatever. It's just like, and it goes on for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I kind of cheated a little bit. Like I would like, at first I was memorizing everything, but then I was like, it's taking too much work. And so I would like put one of my AirPods in my ear, and it would just be like my ear prompter or whatever. And so that's how I did a lot.
Oh, very clever.
Yeah.
Awesome. So at least you were doing stuff that was like creative and fun. And out there.
Keeping myself busy.
Oh, so when did you get out of this? When did you decide to like open your life back up to improv?
Well, so my lease was up in DC in like July 2020.
I forgot to ask, where's your family from?
So I grew up in Northern Virginia, but my parents retired to Arizona literally right before COVID. Like I visited their new house with my brother for the first time, like March 3rd, 2020. And I was out there for a week, and then I literally came home, and that's when everything shut down. And so my brother's lease was up too here in LA, and he was like, I think I'm just going to go to mom and dad's house. And I was like, I guess maybe I'll do that too. And so I went, and it was like being in high school again, with all your parents and your brother there. And
Yeah.
that
I bet your parents are happy though.
yeah, it was a little crazy though for a while because it's it's just a dynamic you haven't done in years,
Yeah.
and you kind of like relearning like stuff about your parents now that you're an adult and not a child or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was great too because like Sedona is beautiful. There were lots of fun like things to do outdoors with hiking and stuff like that. And I was there for like 7 months, and then I moved here. And I still
No
didn't.
improv in that 7 months.
No, and I mean the first time I got back into it was I went and saw Kara do a show with We in like December 2021, like
Mhm.
when it was at Atwater. I don't even know if you were on her team then or whatever.
Maybe, maybe not.
But I saw that, and then she was like, you should take a class with Jake, like, because like UCB is not back to normal yet. Like
Yeah.
this is like you next best thing. And I was like, okay. So I did that, and I had a great time. And I just did a couple of his classes, and then when UCB opened up again, I went right back into that, picked up where I left off.
201.
Yeah. Yeah, and then finished with all of that. I finished 401 in June, and I did like We just this year too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you how was it? I guess maybe the other thing that's like pretty unique that people might really relate to. What was it like jumping back in after a break?
Yeah, it was a little weird. It was definitely weird.
Or
Because
did you have like any trouble jumping back adjusting, or did you have having like bad habits?
no, I mean, I think it was actually like good to kind of come in with a clean slate, just because also like with the way that like it is at UC Bay, and I feel like Will and Jake teach pretty similar in terms to like,
Mm-hmm.
game and things like that. Uh it's just a very different language than we were speaking in DC. And so it almost kind of helped to come in like with a blank slate, because I was like, well, I know like I have skills that are there, but I'm a little more open to like taking on, this new way of like looking at it than I had in the past. So I quite enjoyed that. But it was hard a little bit at times to go into a class with a bunch of people who were new.
Yeah.
Um, because they were just like, someone starts a scene about their dick, and I'm like, oh God, like, are we not like adults here or whatever? Like, so
Yeah, it's kind of like what you're saying before about like Wit was always asking you to like, hey, get used to it. Get like kind of. I feel that there is like this thing in improv where you're kind of always having to start back down here. You're having to reset a lot, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, for sure. It definitely felt
Building a
like
momentum
that.
with the team for like 2 years is great. And then all of a sudden it's like, even if it's not like a full reset, you are having to like humble
Yeah,
yourself and be like, hey, come
for
back down
sure.
here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. And I think another thing that helped too is, I also kind of took a bit of a break between like November of last year and then uh February, because I was in Arizona, and then I was working on my film, and then I came back and I literally signed up for like 3 improv classes in 1 month. I was doing like 301, I did a class with We, and I did a class with Will at Weegis, and it was like 3 days a week I was doing improv, and it was a little overkill, but I feel like I kind of got like goaded, and I was like, I feel great right now,
Right.
so
Kind of like what you're saying before, you hit like a rhythm
yeah,
and like all the things, all the choices and all the decisions you're making are like
yeah,
connecting.
yeah,
Do you think that's important? Yeah, I guess we'll end it here before we jump into the Lloyd stuff. But like LA, there is this mentality. I don't know if it's the same in DC or if it's the same anywhere else.
yeah.
But like there is like a volume mentality here where it's like do as much as you can, take two, try to do improv every single day of the week. Now, personally, actually, I'll let you answer before I say what I think personally.
Yeah. I probably didn't need to do that,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, in some ways it was good, but I did feel like a little burnt out, because at the time too, I had also jumped back into like the on-camera acting class that I had been doing. And so it was like I was in class like 4 days a week,
Yeah.
and it was It was probably a little bit more than I needed to. I mean, I think it was like a little boot camp in a way, which is nice. But then when I kind of pulled back and just finished up with like the 401 class on its own, I was like, this is a lot
Yeah.
easier to handle. Um, I definitely think there's something to be said about like, immersing yourself. But I was like, a month of this was fine. I don't think I needed to do more than a month.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think you should maybe experience that at
Oh yeah,
one point in
yeah.
your life, but I don't know if it's my personal thing is
Sustainable.
I don't think it's sustainable. I think it's healthy, and I
Nah.
think like I start like I was like one of those DC folks. I started doing it for fun. I started
Yeah,
doing it because it was like a cool thing. But then, like with anything, anytime you get enwrapped with a hobby or with a community or with an interest, you end up getting a little bit addicted to it. Then you have more,
for
you do more,
sure.
you get competitive. You're like, well, if I want to achieve that, you see
Oh yeah.
other people are doing it.
I mean that was kind of how I felt about like theater at one point was
Yeah.
because there was one year where I'm hashtag blessed or whatever to be booked and busy, but I was in like 4 shows across kind of one year that all overlapped with each other. And I had like one free week almost like for 10 months. And I was like, I went to my parents and was like, please tell me you're traveling somewhere and I can like freeload on a trip with you guys because I was
Yeah.
like, I need to like not be in DC right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I freeloaded on their trip to Miami.
Yeah.
But it was like it was hard and I was burnt out. And that was something I think I realized during COVID. I was like, there's a lot that I've been missing out on because of how hard I've been trying to like grind and like
Yes. Yeah.
and just be booked all the time. And it's like I would like to go to dinner with my friends or not worry about how late I'm staying up or drinking on a night out because I have to sing tomorrow in a show,
Yeah.
or I want to be able to take a trip somewhere, or just have a little more freedom. And I think that's something I'm trying to cultivate now. So
Yeah. I think it's important to just reiterate for anybody. Yeah. Especially when people are like in their 20s, it's really easy to get stuck in that grind,
absolutely.
whether it be improv, whether it be, like fitness, whether it
Yeah.
be reading books or whatever, people get, caught into these like cycles, and it can be tough to find balance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that you spoke to that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you're listening, take a break, pause, and listen to this later on.
Yes.
Finish this episode later. All right. So let's talk about the most recent part of your journey,
Mm-hmm.
UCB Lloyd, and going through this audition process.
Yes.
So, kind of a new style. Like, but you mentioned that you really took to it and you kind of took a lot of classes. But like the weeks leading up to the audition, how were you feeling about it? How was your relationship to this art form? And
It was interesting because I got the email about it because I guess when they did the Lloyd auditions this time, it wasn't just like open to anybody. You had to be like, in a class or like you had to have tried out before or something. And so I got the email right when I landed in New York as I was like flying to go to Italy for like 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, like, cause Kara texted me and she was like, are you doing it? Are you trying out? I was like, what are you talking about? And then I had to open my email. I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. Like, I was like, I'll do it. Cause I realized it was going to be right after I got back. So I signed up and I kind of forgot about it. And cause I was in Italy, I wasn't thinking about improv while I was in Italy.
You didn't start a practice group in Italy?
And then it was literally, I landed back in New York like 2 weeks later and they were like, here's your time slot. And so I was like, oh, word. Okay. Like we're doing this. So I didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of
Prep
time
or-
to worry and the one thing that
That's probably the best story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Because everybody usually gets so, like anxious about it. But for you to have a vacation tucked in between must have been incredible.
It was nice. And then
everybody should do that. If you have a big audition come up, take an international trip. Trust me.
and then I got, because I ended up coming back a day early and Kara was having like a practice session. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be jet lagged as hell, but I'm going to come to this. And so that was cool. Like, and it was, a group of other like women and non-binary people. And so that was like, it was a fun little environment to like practice and, have that vibe going on. So I'm glad I got that in there. And then on Monday night, I had practice with my Ouija's team, and Will was like, "Are you trying out for Lloyd?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Great, we're doing Harold's tonight." And so that was cool because I got another little like run through. And then this was a piece of advice I've always had for auditions of any kind, was that like you have to have something fun to do after, or something that you're
Mm-hmm.
looking forward to, whether that's like sometimes it'll literally just be like, I'm gonna go to Whole Foods and get a donut, or it could be like,
They have
I'm
donuts at Whole
gonna
Foods?
the little vegan ones with the sprinkles, they're $2 and I love them.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And I it could be anything, or like getting my nails done, or was just
Sure.
something I'm like, the day's not done once I've done this thing. There's other stuff to look forward to today.
That's great advice.
And so I ended up having my audition was at like 1 o'clock, and then it was a Saturday, and I immediately went to the train station down to San Diego to see my boyfriend, and who he wasn't my boyfriend yet at the time, but it was a great distraction because I wasn't thinking about it at all.
Yes. Yeah.
And he doesn't know anything about improv. I brought him to his first show this week. We saw the Smokes
Oh
and
yeah.
the big team, and he loved it. He was dying, and so I was like, nice.
Booked another one.
But but to be around someone who wasn't talking about it or wasn't thinking about it, I think helped too. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. And it sounds like this experience has been really good so far. So I guess yeah, one thing I'll also wrap up on is like what's the word of advice? Because it seems like you have a really healthy grasp, a really healthy relationship with this. What would you say is like a way that you've been able to maintain that, or any like words of wisdom?
Yeah. I mean, because I think it's something that you like encounter a lot in like, your creative world or whatever, is rejection, especially in theater. Like that's how I was having auditions like 3 or 4 times a week. And, I maybe book 1, 2, if you're like on fire, 3 of those a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard because you have to start being able to like evaluate like your sense of self-worth outside of that. And there's like a whole big like a story behind this, but essentially there was like a production in DC that I tried out for, that was, if you ever heard of the musical Once. It's
In a movie about it.
yeah, well, it's based on the movie, and so it's about musicians, and all the actors play their own instruments. I'm a pianist, and I actually was in final callbacks for the national tour of Once, so I was like, oh, I can do this with my eyes closed, no problem. And then they ended up giving the role to someone who doesn't play piano, and actually asked me to be her coach for the show, to teach her piano. And I was like, this is like the worst rejection of my life. I was like,
It's like Barry when they cast that one other girl and asked her to be the acting.
oh my God. Yeah, that's literally what it was like. I was
Yeah.
like, I am the one who has the skill set for this role. I know I can do it. And then this other person who didn't have the skill set, and then admitted to me that she's not skilled enough for the role by asking for my help. That was crazy. And so that was actually like a big turning point in my journey, because that was when I kind of started doing more improv and kind of realizing it's like, you can be really good, you can be really right for something, and then something completely outside of your control jumps in, which is like, this actress's like mom was a little more well connected in the theater scene in DC because she was a director too. And I don't blame anybody for that. Nepo's gonna nepo, but but it did kind of make me realize, I was like, I just gotta like do whatever I can, and know that like I'm doing everything that I can, and then I can't control anything else.
Mhm.
It's so I think having other interests outside of your like main creative pursuit, like for me at the time, it was improv was my other pursuit. I was like, I'm gonna do this because I'm really mad about not getting this role that I know I deserved or whatever. And that led me to being here. It led me to writing the script that I ended up like turning into a movie this year. So I always kind of think that everything works out the way it's supposed to. And even though like at the time you might be like, this is stupid, it's kind of like, you're still just saving space for like what is going to be better for you later in the long run. And ever since I've kind of started having that mindset of like, everything works out, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It does. And you know, I just a little delusionalness helps.
It's a
So
little delulu, but I think
yeah.
it's from what I'm hearing, it's having a good perspective.
Yeah.
As one thing maybe not be working out, so many other things in your life could be working out.
Yeah. And I
probably
also
already are working out. You just have to like.
and I also think you have
shift
to
your
claim it
perspective.
too. I think you have to say like, this is what I want.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, I want to be on a UCB team. If I act like, oh, I'm not good enough or I can't, or like I'm so worried about it, it's like, no, I want it. I think I'm capable of doing it. It just puts you in a better like headspace to be able to accept that like gift when it comes in, I think.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's
Yeah.
really great party advice to end this segment on.
Yeah.
We're going to go and jump into our next segment now, which is going to be our topic of the week. And this particular topic, I'm glad you chose. I think it's really important to talk about. And I have a hard time putting my words together about this topic, but I think you are the perfect person to tackle this with. So we're talking about reputation in the and not even just in this community, but any community. Like your reputation is important. And then the other thing, the other side that can like shift your reputation so that you don't really have control of is gossip.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you about it because you and I are a bunch of little gossip hounds.
I have a tea cellar.
yeah. I remember I forgot what event it was the first time we met. But it was just like,
was that like Kara's birthday party?
It might have been, yeah. And it was just like tea being spilled back and forth. It was like Bluetooth pairing, I was like to say, because like
and then it was like John Chapman's birthday party. That was a big night.
A second one too, yeah. But it's like because I we're human, and we have to kind of just address that first of all. Like whether you like it or not, whether we like to admit it or not, people love to gossip. It's a human nature thing. It's a survival instinct. I think that when people talk about things that happen, drama, it's usually a act of self-preservation because it's how we like avoid that or learn not to like trust people that are dangerous, whatever. But in any case, it's just so interesting to like click because normally I like to do it and other people don't, but it was like boom, we're zeroed in. Anyways, so that being said, we probably talked about you before. I'm just kidding. But yeah, let's talk about why this is important in improv. And I think you and I have been around improvisers around this. And again, this isn't even an improv thing. This is like a life thing. This is like a social life thing. But I guess I wanted to break it down to three different places where reputation and gossip can happen: on stage, off stage, and online. Unless do you have another?
No, that's true.
Factor? All right, let's start with on stage. Your on stage reputation, what things people may say about you. So I guess I'll kick it off with something that I feel really strongly about when it comes to, we're talking about improv. We're talking about an art form. We're talking about collaboration. And, I was lucky enough to have come into improv like later in life as an adult. So I've already gone through a lot of the pitfalls that some young improvisers or some young, people may come into. And like the thing about improv that I think is really important, you kind of mentioned it with like wit. It's not the art of being funny. It's not the art of being, big and loud and boisterous. I see improv as like the arts of like collaboration.
100%.
That's like going to be at the end of the day, being important is funny, but like people, when they're looking at you, when they're thinking about doing a team with you or whether or not, they want to hang out with you more, I think the biggest factor is, can you collaborate? So one of the things you can have work against your reputation is you have a reputation of being uncollaborative, of being selfish, of being a steamroller, of making it about yourself. So I don't know. That's like kind of where I want to start. That's probably one of the biggest blemishes you can have on your reputation in this community in particular, is being like, you can be the nicest guy off stage, really cool, and everybody like, enjoys you. But if you're on stage and you have this reputation of being uncollaborative, I think that could be something that's we're weary of.
Well, I don't think anyone wants to work with or play with someone who's hard to work with, right? Or
that's actually a better way of putting it. Yeah. Well, maybe that might be an off-stage thing, but yeah, hard to work with on stage is even worse.
Yeah. I mean, and it's the kind of thing too. It's like, I think, you probably notice something like 3 or 4 times and then it becomes a pattern, and then that's probably when you establish in your head like, okay, this is this person's thing, or that makes them hard to play with. Or like I could think of, being in a class with someone and you kind of suss out quickly like I may want to avoid like doing scenes with this person because I feel like I'm going to get a little steamrolled, or like I'm not going to be able to do like my best work if I'm like, you know, walking around everything this um chaotic, person is doing. And I think that's probably like a more frequent experience as you're building and learning and stuff. Um but of course there's always chatter about like, what show just happened, how did it go, or what moves did you like in that team, or did like, or I didn't like when they did blah 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 or something. And coming from theater too, like we would always have a rule like, you don't say anything until you're outside of the doors. Like
Mhm.
you can't turn to your neighbor and be like, what do you think? And it's like, nope, you're not saying anything in here.
Yeah.
um
I think you make a really good point. This came up several times in your journey as well. You would mention that like you step on stage and it'd be someone or something that just makes you feel uneasy, or just makes you like, it seems like that's what's kind of getting you in your head more so than like your choices or your comedy or whatever. It's just like who your other person
oh
is.
yeah,
So it does have it does play a big factor.
yeah. I mean, I remember too, like before I tried out for Harold the first time here, I did like a workshop. It was like a practice workshop, and it was taught by Sarah, who's lovely. But aside from her, I was the only woman in that room. It was me and like 12 guys. And that felt a little hard, I think I generally don't notice like uh men in like improv making like weird choices when a woman's around if the numbers are equal. But if the numbers aren't equal, it feels like, are we making jokes about me? Like, or are we making jokes about the scene? Like,
Yeah.
so it's
I
something to
think
think
that's a
about.
really interesting point and a really like important perspective to bring up.
Yeah.
A lot of times it is just the environment or the optics or the situation
Mm-hmm.
that will completely change it. Because I've been in that situation too.
Yeah.
Like, no, not in that situation, but I've been in a class with like with
Uh-huh.
15 men and one woman,
Yeah.
and like whether you, I don't know. I guess the important thing is just to be aware of that, so that
Yeah.
like just like something you said earlier, I think also really resonates, and this is important to like spell out. But like, I don't think people are out there trying to judge you or assume the worst in you, but it
No.
usually takes like 3 times to establish a pattern.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, we're improvisers, we're comedians. We know
Yeah.
that 3 times establishes a rule. That's
There's a pattern. Yeah.
literally the whole basis of our
Yeah.
art form. So if we do notice something happen 3 times in a row, it's going to have a connection.
Yeah.
And when in a situation like that, where if you are in a class with 15 guys and one woman, all it takes is 3 separate scenes. It doesn't have to be you, but like if this class, one guy does a scene where we make the woman,
Yeah.
wife or girlfriend or whatever, those common
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
things, if that happens 3 times in the class, even though it happened across 3 different scenes and 3 different improvisers, that pattern has been set that this
Mm-hmm.
class is like not fun, not cool, and the
Yeah.
humor is kind of leaning a certain way, maybe in a more like
Right.
chauvinistic or misogynist way. So being aware of that is always like really important. I think
Yeah.
it's a lot of awareness.
I think it's also hard too when like you don't know each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot if I was, doing an improv set with, I'm the only woman, but it's like you and Ryan Casey and Anthony and like, people that I know. That's because like, who I am. You see me as me. I'm not just like random woman in this group of guys or whatever. But I think it's harder when like,
But I think you kind of hit
yeah.
the, I don't know, you're kind of hitting the like, that's like the source is that when people look at you and they see random woman, I think that's a problem rather
Yeah.
than seeing fellow improviser,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
fellow collaborator.
Yeah. For sure.
This is another improviser, so you can be anything or anyone that you choose to be. And
Yeah.
when they only see random women, they are going to like, unfortunately, label you as the things that they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, in terms of like on stage, is maybe more optimistic is
Mm-hmm.
what people do like and what
Oh
people
yeah.
do see. And you know, I see this a lot, and I favor this more than the other. It's people that are like overly polite. I kind of like that though, you know. Starting off is always really tough, I think. Like whenever you do start off with a new team or a new class, whatever. And hopefully it's tough because of this thing, which is everyone is still really playing. They're kind of overly like waiting for you. So like I know sometimes whenever I'm in a new workshop or like a with like a mashup, I'm not playing at 100%. I'm playing subdued because I'm always like
You're sussing everyone out. Yeah.
sussing, but also like offering them the floor rather than taking the
Yeah.
floor. I mean, and you know, this some people might see that as something I can work on. But if I'm stepping off for the first time, I'm just gonna be very neutral, very soft, and very like, you know, oh hey, it's a nice day for fishing. Do you have anything? You know,
Yeah.
instead of just being like, hey, we're fishing. You're my nephew, and we got
Yeah.
a big fish. This is old Trudy. We're gonna catch old Trudy today because legend, you know,
Yeah.
rather than like take over. Sometimes I will just be more like, oh,
Yeah.
how's your day?
Well, I think that's another thing too, like in the way that we were saying, like what makes you hard to play with, like that makes you easy to play. Like I always admire people who I think are like flexible on stage, or like, you know, we'll get a curveball thrown at them and then they're like, we're doing it. No worries. Like, you know, and isn't like overpowering and is always kind of like solutions oriented. Like I think that is like the best kind of person to play with, someone who kind of just, and I think this is something that like Will Hines does very well, is like if something happens that's unexpected, he'll just like he'll take the moment and he'll just sit there and be like, okay. And then like, I mean, that happened in the smoke show the other night. Like I can't remember what it was, but there was like a line that you could tell he wasn't expecting to hear, and he's just like,
that's right.
analyze, assess the situation, moving forward, let's go, you know. And that's like that's someone I'd want on my team, you know.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that like hopefully people are acknowledging it, but I feel like that's like it's one of those invisible
Yeah,
unsaid
it is
things
small. Yeah.
where I think you subconsciously, it's like a subconscious thing. This is something that maybe people don't really gossip about. You're never just like, oh, I do love Ryan. He always corrects things.
Yeah.
But like your brain still does the work.
Yeah.
Your brain still does the work of like having seen that, having that check off a couple times, and then moving forward whenever you're on stage with that person, you're at ease.
Yes.
And you're not like tensed up.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a stealth reputation
Yeah.
you have, you know, where people just subconsciously feel good around you rather than feel panicked.
Yeah, I do love that.
Anything else on stage wise?
I don't know. I mean, I still think it kind of comes to like we need to see something 3 times and there's like, you know, that's kind of how like I feel like people like establish their reputation, is like once, you know, like whatever that good move of yours is or whatever. And like I know what I do. Like I know every time, like, you know, if someone sees me 3 shows in a row, like they're like, Tess does that all the time. And for me, it's like my go-to character is I'm always like the dumb bitch. And like I did that in our very first Lloyd show. I did it in my Lloyd audition. Like it's kind of like me playing the hits or whatever when I'm at like obviously I want to be creative and do fun things or whatever, but then I'll like be like, okay, I need to make a choice. Let me make the choice that I know always works for me or whatever if I'm in a pickle or something. And so and then that kind of becomes like, you know, what you do, and like, you know, your coach will pick up on it and that sort of thing.
People will pick up on it. Yeah. I guess that is important too. Like recognizing your reputation can be changed or can be a correct or can be something you can adjust.
Yeah. That's exactly like, you know, what Taylor Swift did with Reputation, the album, is that everyone was like, oh, like, you know, this is the media narrative about me. And she was like, great, then I'm going to be exactly what you say I am.
Yeah,
and
let me lean into that.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know, and then change your mind about
exactly.
it. And yeah, do it 3 times. All right, great. So that is talking about reputation on stage. And again, I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here. These are things that people know about. People have already kind of said this. Your teachers have said it. And I guess we're kind of putting into perspective how that can like manifest or how it can affect your interactions. Next is offstage. I think this is maybe a bigger one, the more important one, the one where the gossip really fires off. So I think in my opinion, this is actually more important than the way you handle yourself on stage. you could be the world's best improviser on stage, but if your reputation off stage is bad,
Yeah.
people are gonna not want to hang out with you even more.
Yeah.
And first of all, what do you think about that? Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why, you may want to do or do not, work with someone, but um how someone is as a person, like who they are at their core, I think is extremely important. And you don't want to be doing a fun activity with, anyone that makes you uncomfortable or just like sucks the energy out of a room. And it doesn't happen a lot, but I remember like there was like stories in DC of like someone there who it was kind of like, let's like this guy's dating a lot of the students, like maybe you don't want to like be around them or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like we like to call us, we're actors and blah, blah, but like I think we're humans on stage. I
oh
don't think
yeah.
we're actors. So I think it's so hard to avoid or forgo that,
Mm-hmm.
Um I this is not my story to tell, but I think it's still, I don't know, hopefully helpful, hopefully worth saying. But like there was a situation that happened years ago in a different community where one of the improvisers started uh one of the improvisers had a girlfriend, and then this other improviser who was his teammate ended up like having an affair with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that just made it so uncomfortable because like it's tense, everything's weird, and like even the audience, it was like we're not laughing,
Yeah.
we're and I maybe it is like part of this. I think if you're strangers, maybe you wouldn't notice it, but there's also tension on stage.
Mm-hmm.
There's all so there's all these things that happen off stage that they're not bringing on this, and they could be the world's best actors, and they're trying not to like let it affect their performances,
Yeah.
but like there is just still something unsaid.
Oh
So
yeah.
you always do bring that like off stage relationship on with you, which
Right.
is why like teams that are long established and have practiced for a while, they're always going to hit a little harder because regardless of what's happening on there, you can feel their camaraderie, you can feel their
Yeah.
closeness. And then conversely, if there's two people on stage, they hate each other, even if it's the world's best
Yeah.
scene and oh my gosh, they're making all the great moves, you're still like, I don't feel right
Yeah,
laughing.
yeah,
Something's off
exactly.
here.
I mean, it even makes me think of like when I was in DC, and like at the time, like I was, dating someone on my Herald team, and there was like, I don't think we had like at this point like made anything like super official, or like we weren't really like talking to people about it, like, but people on our team knew. And then we had a show where we were in a scene together, and then it almost became like a little meta, like that it was like a relationship reveal, and then we ended up like kissing in the scene, and then people in the audience were like, "Whoa," or whatever. And like that was actually fun and like satisfying, because it felt like,
Yeah.
the audience was kind of aware something was happening. Like the
Yeah.
people who would come to Herald Night probably picked up on it. And then you get a little like satisfaction of like, oh, now I'm like clued in on like the team drama a little bit,
Right.
And I think that's like, that's the fun side of gossip too, is that, gossip is really just storytelling. And
Yeah.
it's storytelling about people, and it might be embellished, which, it could be bad, but I love fun gossip. Like I love hearing like a little something like that. Like, oh, did you see like they kissed in the show, and like no one had said what they were doing before. That's fun. Or
Yeah.
like,
We always hope that the gossip is innocent and juvenile, and that there's something
yes,
darker. Because it would just be like, did you see they're in that scene and their fingers touch and they kind of
yeah,
we hope that that's just a little flirtatious, like budding of and it
yeah,
could be nothing. And if it's something, it's harmless, and if it is something, it is also harmless. It does suck when it's just like,
yeah. Well, because
isn't she married?
that
Nobody
literally
wants that.
happened like a couple months ago. I was like hanging out with some people, and I was like, who's got some gossip? And then someone was like, oh, I know something, and so and so is getting a divorce. And I was like, this isn't what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I wanted to hear something messy. And I was like, that's sad. And
Yeah,
like,
yes.
unless it was like, oh, and he had a secret family, like tell me that. But I don't want to know, like, just,
Yeah.
there's a kind of like levels to what is fun to participate in. And then like, the kind of gossip that has like a heaviness or like a seriousness to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And like, yeah, I always like to say, this is, I have such a bad reputation for like revealing each other people's stuff, but like the truth shall set you free. That in that case, the truth is like fun and it lets everybody feel like I always think that the truth is like, absolves everything,
Yeah.
even if it's something that's bad, it's like, oh, well, now we have the truth and now we know how to handle this. You shouldn't be like hiding or being ashamed of it, because like the opposite end of it is, if you don't know, if there was no explanation, our minds tend to, we're so creative, we're so imaginative,
Overanalyzing, yeah,
and we always maybe go to the worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
or our minds will range, like maybe they were saving a cat from a tree, all the way down to like, oh, maybe they're in cahoots with the organized crime. Well,
Yeah.
so your brain's gonna go everywhere, and it is just like a guessing game, versus if you just give someone the truth and just more transparent, and it's just like, hey, I'm tired, my back hurts, I'm not gonna do practice today. It's
Yeah.
like, great, now we have all the answers we have.
Yeah. Totally.
And I guess the other thing too, just in terms of like talking about your like offstage reputation, is just safety. It kind of brings back to what you said earlier. Like this multiplies. Like it's one thing how you are on stage, but it's a bigger thing how you are off stage. And if you present yourself as someone who is like secretive or duplicitous or lies a lot, then when we're on stage, it's hard. Again, it's hard to not bring that, where it's just like, I don't know if you're gonna like sell me out right now. I don't know if I initiate a scene with you, you're going to like, deny me or keep secrets or like do something else. So like our brains, and trust is just so important in improv, and your reputation, and I think that's the reason why your offstage
well,
reputation
you
is so
have to
important.
be very vulnerable to like perform in any capacity. Like a friend of mine is she's a series regular on this TV show, and she talked about how the person who played her best friend on the show, and her, like, it was just like they didn't really like get along, and but you have to play best friends. And
You're talking about Sex in the City?
no,
Okay, that's like a super old reference.
yes, but I mean, that I think can be really, that adds like a layer of like, you're already doing hard work to perform, and you're already like, you know mentally and like physically like showing up on stage at your best, and now you also have to like add this emotional element to it, if it's like, oh, now I'm playing with like you know this person who doesn't like me, or I'm playing with my ex-boyfriend, so yeah,
this guy that has my phone charger,
all
of a sudden he wants to give it back. Come on, I got $3.99, I can go to
I'll never
CVS.
forget that. I was like, do you think my phone's been dead for 2 months, or like
yeah,
what?
How do you think I got this text?
And then I was like, is he trying to like ask me out again? I was like, are you texting me because you want to go out again? He was like, no. I was like, okay.
I know. I'm making that face. So I'm like, okay,
so weird.
buddy.
Anyway,
yeah. I'm gonna get coffee. Let's get closure. Fuck you. All right. Yeah. One thing I want to mention again on the other side of this is, one of the things that like Glass Clown does, I think has really helped us get to like closer and help each other out, is that like we will talk to each other again.
Yeah.
We will like after practice get together and just like talk about our lives, talk about any issues or whatever. And what that does is, again, the opposite. Rather than being, again, secretive or duplicitous or sneaky, it's like, no, here's everything kind of out in the open. And then, that could be a double-edged sword, because we could also just be like, dude, that sucks, I'm going home. And now they don't feel safe. But we've done a good thing where we've kind of nurtured like this space and this like, group where we can feel safe among each other and say things.
Yeah.
So like on stage, if somebody makes a wild choice, we know that's not gonna be met with like, that's terrible, I'm leaving, I'm walking off stage.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is a choice, and we're gonna like work with it, we're gonna build with it, and we feel more entrusted to one another. It also makes it great the other end, where if one of us chooses to play like a terrible person on stage, we already have established that that's not us, So if somebody says something vulnerable or something painful about their past, in real life, off stage, we're going to be there for them. We're going to listen. But in a stage, if someone's just like, I just want to let you know I'm having a baby and it's yours. And I'm like, I think I left the parking meter running. I'll be right back. We can make that choice, and we won't, judge each other for it, because now we know they're like, oh, this is a comedic choice.
Yeah.
And great. Now we're going to play this parking meter abandoner or whatever, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Anything else about offstage reputation and gossip?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think kind of what you said is very valuable. Like uh it is a way to like kind of connect with your teammates a little
Mhm.
bit, because at the start, especially if you're on like a team that you kind of just got plopped into and you didn't really choose, like you kind of have to force that bond a little bit. And what do you all already have in common? The community that you're in. You kind of have to talk about it.
Yeah.
That gives you common ground, right? And I'm always, me, I'm always the first person to like start shit, or bring
Yeah.
bring something up, like. And I think that was like, at least on my Lloyd team, I remember like the second time we all hung out or whatever, um, the conversation was like a little surface level, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Hey, does anyone want to take a look at this like dating app conversation for me?" And
Yeah.
you know, then things kind of like opened up, and people were like sharing their own experiences or things like that, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
All right. Last one is going to be your online reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one is the trickiest one because I think this is something that's like just so new to society. You
Yeah.
know, there have been so many rules of how people interact, social contracts and social rules, you know, in person. But like social media is like changing by the day,
Yeah.
and we're the first, like we're the first generation to have it. So
Mm-hmm.
we're the first generation to also like go through all the same trials and tribulations and pitfalls. So this is like, and you know, this might change. The things that we talk about on this podcast you're listening to a year from now, maybe the rules of online have changed. But here's what I will say about your online reputation is, um, it's your billboard. Okay, I'll tell a
Yeah.
story too. I'll tell a story that's like very, it really affected the way I handle my social media, which I'm on a lot. But when I was in college, I was applying for a job to be like one of the campus security guards, you know, because I was like, this is great because I'm already on campus all day long. If you're going to pay me to like just walk around and just make sure that like whatever people need to
Mm-hmm.
like walk home, or you know nobody's lost or whatever, I can do that. So I go into the job interview, and it's through the campus police department, you know. So we're going through the normal stuff, whatever. All of a sudden, in the middle of the interview, this guy, this officer walks in, and then he just on the front of the table opens a folder, pulls out 3 photos of me drinking at parties from Facebook.
Oh no.
And then the interview, they never addressed it. They didn't talk about it. But the whole time I was just like, yeah, I think one of my strengths is communication. I've always been really good at, you know, because
Yeah.
and I think at that they're like, okay, like this is it, and he's not gonna get the job and blah blah.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time I was like whatever, 22 years old, 21, 22, very, very indignant. I was like, how dare you pull that?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's maybe because like growing up with the internet, you know, as a kid, you're like, oh, this is private stuff.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize like, oh no, it's not. It's literally Facebook. They literally, none of them are my friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
They just found it. Uh, um, and that was because we didn't know about privacy settings. We didn't know about these things, you know.
Yeah.
But that really like changed my attitude towards my online presence now. So now like, yeah, everything is private, or anything I put out public, I have to imagine the worst case scenario. Unfortunately, like it just sucks that that's what it is. But it's like, yeah, is this something that I want a job interview person to bring up? You know, because they're allowed to. It's just like the gossip.
Yeah.
Just like you're allowed to talk about things, people are allowed to look you up online.
Oh yeah.
And they may pretend that they never saw it, but they saw it, they made the impression of it, and now that is your reputation, whether you like it or not. So with that being said, yeah, like what are some things you think about like online reputations?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're right. It's a billboard. It's your brand. It's like, it's your kind of it's almost like a LinkedIn, but just for who you are as a person. If someone looks you up on
Yes.
Instagram. And so, I'm always, it's a way to have a little control over your story too, or what you post. And like, I have a Finsta, I have a fake Instagram, and it's like for my
Very
like
practical.
close friends. And so that is where I post all the like tea and all the like goofy shit or whatever. And then like my main page is a little more like
Curated.
curated. But then I also have a TikTok, and I talk a lot about like more personal stories and things on there. And so anytime I post, I do have to think, I'm like, all right, well, I never like say anyone's name or, things like that. But I'm like, I have to be careful, because like, what if, the person who is referenced in this video, like were to find it, how I just have to think if one, I would care, or like, or two, how I would handle it. If it was like, let me speak about, because I talk a lot about like dating and culture on my TikTok, and I'd be like, if that ex from like 5 years ago came out of the woodwork, how would I handle it? And sometimes I'll just preemptively block people. I'm like, I'll find if they have one, I'll like, because then they'll never see it. But like I had this one experience a couple months ago. I made a TikTok about like, you know, I'm about to turn 31, and so I've been starting to date men who are like a little bit more older, late 30s or like early 40s, and how sometimes men in their 40s will like text like my parents, and it'll be like, hey, period, or whatever, and I'll be like, are they mad at me? Like, what's going on? Like, use an emoji, please. And I the week after I made that TikTok, I matched with a guy on Hinge who was like 42, and I he was like texting like that, and I didn't say anything, but I was like, oh, here it is, or whatever. And he like confirmed our first date and said like, see you tonight, period, or whatever. And I said, yeah, sounds good. And then he kind of wrote back right away, and he was like, sorry, I should have used a little more excitement, like, see you tonight, exclamation point, like smiley face. And I was like, it's a little weird. And then over dinner, I like, it kind of came, we were like talking about TikTok or something, and he was like, I will admit that I saw yours. And I was like, did you send that message with the exclamation points because you saw my video? And he was like, yeah, I did. And so I was like, wow, so you like got the playbook, basically. And so
they have to, like, I mean, like, not that they have to, but like they can't help it is what I meant to say.
Yeah. And so that's
they can't help but like see what you're putting out there and be affected by it.
Yeah. And in some ways I think it's sometimes I know that like sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe we weren't supposed to know this much about people, but sometimes I think it's a good thing, because you can learn a lot.
I think even subconsciously by you making that TikTok. Sorry, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze.
No, you're good.
Like,
yeah.
Like, you want people to know that about you.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like, oh, I only want my friends to know I'm annoyed by this, but any potential partners, I want them to not know that I'm annoyed. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm so glad you brought up dating apps, because that's like another opportunity. It's another online face, another billboard that we have.
Yeah.
Because look, I'll be honest, I've seen some of your profiles on
Oh,
dating apps.
yeah, I've seen them too.
We see them. And like, again, that's also going to affect your reputation, because now, depending on what you put on there, if I see you in person, I'm like, oh, that's you,
Yeah.
You're a fish guy.
Yeah. Well, I remember too, when I was in DC and I was using the apps, like I would get messages from people being like, oh, I saw you perform at Herald Night. Like, you were funny or whatever. And I started just taking screenshots of any time someone referenced. And it wasn't even like improv people. It was just like people who saw a show or whatever. Maybe their friend was on a team or something. And I ended up saving all of these little screenshots, and I have them on like my website in like the press section, which has like, quotes from like the Washington Post when I was doing theater and stuff. And then on the side, it's like, men from dating apps think I'm funny too and hot or whatever. And so it's like, I made a little joke out of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so clever for you to do that. But like,
you never know who's seeing you and where you are. So,
and I don't know if I want to dive too deep into this, and if you want to, you can, but like, like the messages people send online, that's part of your reputation.
It is. Yeah. You always gotta, there could be a screenshot. You never know.
Yeah. And again, like, you shouldn't be upset that the screenshot happened.
No.
That's the human nature part.
Yeah.
What you said is what you should be concerned about.
I'm sure the screenshot that
you can't control what people are going to do with what you say, but you can't control what comes out of your mouth.
Exactly.
Or rather what comes through the screen.
Yeah. Or you got to know if the person that you're talking to is
I think it's
trusted source.
Yeah. I think it's so like interesting that people like think that the rules are different online. And again, this is because it's new to us, and this is coming from the same kid who got caught with those photos in that job interview. But it's just like, like anything you say can and will be done, because we've all been in there. We've all gotten a weird text or DM, and we've all talked to the group chat about it. Like, no, look at what she's saying. What do you think? Do you think she's really interested, or do you think she's just blah blah? So if people are doing that, just realize that like the same is gonna apply in improv. Yep. Why would it not? So I don't know how much, because like now we're talking about like policing people's interactions, but like at the end of the day, yeah, your reputation is going to matter. And it's going to like multiply tenfold in this community because it is so small. It is so
It is
tight
so
knit.
small.
And this is all just a group of people that are trained to look for patterns, to look for drama, to stir up their own drama. So
Yeah.
it's even more
A
tough
good
here.
scene doesn't exist without a little conflict.
A little conflict, a little
Yeah,
bit of
a
juice.
little
Yeah.
what you're doing is weird.
But yeah, we got to frame it.
You
Yeah.
know?
Hey, normally people DM during the hours of 9 and 5 p.m. This guy's DMing you at 1 a.m. That's a little interesting. That's all I'm saying.
Yep, we're just doing what we've been trained to do.
We've just been doing what we've been trained to do. Any other thoughts about online reputation and gossip?
I think that covers
Oh, I
it.
haven't had one last
Yeah.
thing too. It's just like, yeah, it's also opportunity for people to use. It's also an opportunity. Sorry, talk about positives. It's an opportunity for people to get to know you.
Yes.
In a positive
That's
way.
true.
So if you are only promoting shows, people may just like, I don't think this person has a social life. It's like, talk about that too. You know, have a nice
Yeah.
balance.
You are the improviser who blank or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah. Like you're showing other
I
facets
like
of you.
being the improviser who overdresses for shows. And you know what? It's working because I saw Ask Out with my parents when they were in town a couple weeks ago, and some random girl in the audience was like, "Oh my God, I loved when you wore those leather pants at Lloyd Night." I was like, I don't know who you are, but I'm obsessed that you remember this. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it also gives people things to like connect on. Like
Yeah.
you've been again, I didn't even know, but I saw through your stories that you've been doing a lot of like traveling to like other parts of SoCal. And since I've lived in SoCal my whole life, it gives us more to talk
Yeah.
about. Like, I've been there. I like that, blah, blah, blah. And it gives us a chance to like talk about things that aren't just
Right.
improv. So
Yeah. Who are you outside of this?
yeah. So use that as opportunity. I know a lot of people use it just to like promote their shows, but like what movies you like, what TV shows you like, all these things like that. This is also a chance. It's like a never-ending living room. You know, you get to know each
Yeah,
other,
that's a great way to put it.
pull things up. So
Yeah.
yeah, use the online reputation stuff as a positive
To connect.
to connect. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And take down some of those phishing photos. I don't think anybody wants to see those. All right, great. Great opportunity to talk to you about.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Rather than gossiping, we are just talking about gossiping,
Yes.
which is great. All right, it's time for our last segment, which is going to be
Hot Improv Takes.
So you familiar with this segment?
So we have to rant on something a little bit.
Yeah, something in improv that we want to see like more of or less of, or if we like it, it's like this is like now where it's at. Let's like, you know, just do a hot take. Do you have one or do you want me to go first?
Something that I love and always want to see more of is like really dumb like sub games. Like I am obsessed with anyone who can like remember like one tiny little detail from like the opening or from like the very first scene, and then we'll like pull it out of nowhere. And I do kind of wish that was a skill that like, you know, is something that would be easier to work on, because it just seems like you have to just be really good at remembering things, or picking up on like smaller patterns. Like I remember there was like a scene that I did in practice with my Ouija's team, and there ended up being this like little sub game of like British accents that didn't make sense and that only happened with like certain kinds of characters in this, and it was like the funniest thing, and it was like probably one of our best scenes. But I think it was because like we weren't just like doing the tradition, like the overall game and all that stuff was there, but there were like these little like surprises or something that was like also funny that was just a little more stupid, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I just love a stupid laugh. Like I want to do the clever thing and do the format, but I also want like, you know, something a little goofy.
All right, I'm ready for my hot improv take.
Go.
But I want to put a little disclaimer because I want you to hear the whole thing before you like hear what I'm going to say. All right, hot improv take. I want to see more violence in scenes. But I don't mean, and like that's what I'm saying. I don't want like violence like to encourage violence, but I'm talking about Looney Tunes. You know, I'm talking about SpongeBob
dropping a piano on someone's head.
Yeah, like when we a lot of our comedy taste growing up was like violent slapstick. It was violence based, you know. So like it's gonna work, it's gonna hit. But obviously, I think violence has become a very like weighted, heated, loaded thing because I think it's, you know, it's first of all it's improv and you don't want to be too physical. Like when we respect everybody's boundaries, but like when it's cartoonish and when it's done again like with a comedic or ironic take, that's what's gonna make it funny. Like I've seen it happen like in a couple of scenes lately, like where it's just been really funny, and you know, a lot of times uh, it's not funny when it's like, you know, big guy beating up a little
Yeah.
person, right? That's never fun. Or whenever like someone brings out like a lot of violence in scenes are like guns and knives, and like that's not fun either, because that's something that's like a truth that we're all dealing with, you know. But like if I were to kick you out of a bar and I kick your butt, you know, that's
Yeah.
funny, because it's like, well, what's going on? This is like the
Yeah.
1940s. Why is this person kicking someone's butt, you know? Or you know, if I challenge you to a duel and I like get a glove and I slap your face,
Yeah.
like that's an example I think of like how we like it's physical comedy, and it's a comedic imagery, and again, it's something that we're just so ingrained and so used to seeing.
Yeah.
But because I think, you know, again, life is scary, and when we think about violence, it's like, oh, let me evoke real violence.
Mhm.
That's going to be tough. But like if
Yeah.
you can if you can get in touch with your, you know, inner child and do some childish
Yeah.
violence, if you can
Pie in the face.
pie in the face, yeah, like how funny, like how many scenes we have in restaurants and no one's ever just like, what, you're breaking out with me, pie in the face.
It's a big Real Housewives thing. They'll throw the water in the face or
Yeah, like how much is that like such a real thing now, and it's also kind of funny.
yeah.
And how often do we, like, when was the last time you saw anybody throw water in someone's face in a scene? Almost never.
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
And it
just think
happens every week on Real Housewives.
happens. How can the housewives can do it, but improvisers, you know, we're supposed to be trained professionals. We can't throw a space work water. Anyways, that's all I'm trying to say. Let's get a little bit more physical violence, but that's not what I meant. But you know what I mean. Yeah, in improv. That's my hot take.
I love it.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. There's something else to do except for
you.
give us your plug. So please tell us about all the different projects you got.
Oh gosh. Come to Lloyd Night. Come see Hi Baby Gorgeous. We're named after a Real Housewives quote. So that was all me. So if you love Real Housewives,
branding improv team expert.
Yes, we'll be friends. And then the movie that
wait, but when is Lloyd Night?
What?
When is Lloyd Night?
Every other Monday. Well, first and third Mondays at 10 p.m. at UCB Franklin.
And you got a Instagram?
Instagram is Tess D Higgins.
Oh, I meant for the team.
Oh, it's Hi Baby Gorgeous Improv, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it up.
Yes. And then I should hopefully have some good news about festival acceptances for my feature film coming out in 2024. The trailer drops on Tuesday, so
excited.
Yeah, if you're interested,
tell us about that film. Give us a little bit more.
Oh, it's a dark comedy about the final 5 women on a reality dating show who, over the course of one night, discover some upsetting truths about the intentions of their suitor. And on a show where women are traditionally pitted against each other, they must suddenly come together to assert their self-worth and their integrity against not only their suitor, but also the producers of the show who manipulated them into falling in love. So,
boom,
yeah,
very prescient.
It's very fun.
What's it called?
It's called Him. And that's the fun part of the movies. You never see the suitor. You never learn his name. They just refer to him by his pronouns, because the story's not about him. It's about the women and the romance of friendship. And
how's that for the Bechdel test?
It's funny because it is kind of about a man, but it's not, you know,
yeah.
And so and then Troy Baker is in it, who is the guy. He's like a big video game voiceover guy. He voiced Joel in The Last of Us, and he plays kind of like our Lady Whistle Down type voiceover role, and so that's a big fun part of it too.
And when can people check that out? What's the
hopefully we'll have an announcement on where we're premiering at a film festival sometime soon. So I don't know when that is yet, but this is the month where we'll start hearing. So
awesome. Can't wait. Been following that project for a while. Can't wait to hear more about it.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much again for stopping by, Tess.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
David.
it. Super fun. Glad we got a chance to do this.
Me too.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Great job. That was fun.
Thanks, man. That was fun.
I'm glad we tackled that.
Oh my gosh.